CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 4, Part 20, Audio by Renee Matthew. So the Chinese officials wanted to set up, especially the Japanese and the Chinese, they wanted to set up a kind of new monarchy based on the model of the Europeans, but not directly a copy of them, especially the Japanese people. So they wanted their emperor to be treated with respect, with reverence, with lot of dignity, as he was considered the direct descendant of sun goddess. We saw that earlier. And he was also shown as a leader of westernization. So he should have both the inculcated values of the Western and the Japanese. And he was a direct descendant of the sun goddess. That is what they believed. So it is a kind of combination of both the West and their own culture. And they also decided that his birthday will be a national holiday and he will be wearing Western style military uniforms. There will be a lot of edicts which will be issued in his name to set up modern institutions which will promote and propagate education and intellectual capacity building programs. The imperial rescript on education of 1890, that is, again they were revising the educational policies by 1890, encouraged people to pursue learning, advance public good and promote common interests. So that was the rescripting of education by 1890, to pursue learning, advance public good and promote common interests. There was a new school system which was built from the 1870s, which made schooling compulsory for boys and girls, and by 1910 it was almost universal. It was not only an exposure to just boys like other parts of the world, but they wanted everybody to join school. And tuition fees were minimal. It was universal. They did not collect much fees from all the children. So much of improvement was there to promote education, to make people understand the importance and value of educating themselves. And of course the curriculum was based on Western model, but by 1870s they started emphasizing modern ideas. Stress was also placed on loyalty and study of Japanese history. They understood that they will have to have a combined effort of both the Western model and their own culture and tradition. That is actually good, because it gives way to a new system or a new style. So this new style emphasized on moral values. It stressed a lot on moral values like loyalty, and also it was compulsory for the students, for the children to study Japanese history. The Ministry of Education was very particular about what was happening in the curriculum, especially in the selection of textbooks. They also gave a lot of importance to training the teachers so that they will have a combination of both the Western style and their own culture and tradition, to be more pragmatic. Then there came the moral culture. They were very, very particular about instilling the moral culture in the children. And the texts always encouraged the children to revere their parents, to obey their parents, to respect their parents, to be loyal to the nation and become good citizens. These were some of the values that are still inculcated in the children from a very early age. The Japanese borrowed their written script, of course, from the Chinese in the 6th century. I told you that China was a great power of influence over Japan, and they borrowed this written script from China, but their language was very different from Chinese. They developed two phonetic alphabets, which was known as Hiragana and Katakana. Hiragana and Katakana, which was totally different from the Chinese script. Hiragana is considered feminine. Even in French we have got some words which are feminine in nature. So Hiragana, of course, had feminine scripts, but it was used by many women writers in the Heian period. So that is why it was considered feminine. Another reason is because of that, because it was used by many women writers. And you should know that there were a lot of Japanese women writers in those times, especially in the Heian period. Do you remember the Heian period? The person Murasaki wrote about the tale of Gonji. It is written by using a mixture of Chinese characters and phonetics. It is a mix of Chinese characters and phonetics, so that the main part of the word is written with a character. For example, the word going, G-O-I-N-G. Go would be written with a character, and ing will be written in phonetics. Phonetics is pronunciation, articulation of how to articulate the word to tell it in a very short way, though it is not the exact explanation, but half will be written in character and the other half will be written in phonetics. There was a kind of phonetic syllabary. That is, they wanted to give importance to the study of phonetics, especially from a very early childhood in schools, and that started spreading to even the elite part of the society. It was spreading in a very quick way. Everybody wanted to study the importance of phonetics, and it just spread like that. In the 1880s, it was suggested that Japanese developed a completely phonetic script. They developed a complete phonetic script. It adopted a European language. So this was something which was completely different from the Chinese. It gave them a lot of independence. It gave them a lot of importance also as the Chinese script. But neither was done. So it was their vocation to start this script, which was completely phonetic in nature, or they had to adopt a European language. But none of this was actually done. They were able to put up this phonetic syllabary, but these things were not done because of practical reasons. To integrate the nation, the Meiji government imposed a new administrative structure so that they will have an integrated form of the nation. It adopted a new administrative structure. What they did is they created some change in the old village and domain boundaries. They started altering the old village system and domain boundaries. And the administrative unit had to have revenue. They should have enough money and stock which was adequate to maintain and retain the local schools and health facilities, and also to serve as a recruitment center for the military. So it was a kind of three patterned role where they should have enough revenue to have local schools, maintain local schools with health facilities, and also to recruit for the military. They gave a lot of importance to the military skills. All young men over 20 had to do a period of military service, whether they liked it or not, whether they were going to join the military or not. It was very important for them to do a period of military service so that it becomes an experience for them. Then if they want, they can continue to serve the military, but otherwise also it was mandatory for everybody above 20 to do military service to get an experience, to understand what is happening. A modern military force was developed for this reason. There was a legal system to set up to regulate the formation of political groups. They wanted to have a check on the formation of the political groups so that they will not have unnecessary grouping system and all that, to control the holding of meetings and impose strict censorship. So whatever was written and spoken will have a kind of hold. It will have a control. They will have a monitoring system to check, to keep a check of the meetings and the censorship. In all these measures, the government had to face opposition. Of course, the government had to react for all these things that was happening. Okay, whatever was happening, there was a legal system which was set up to formulate the political groups, and everybody was opposing this because it was new and people were used to have political meetings, or the system was such that they will have their own private meetings and all, contriving against the government. So of course it was met with opposition, but the government did not mind all that. The military and the bureaucracy was put under the direct command of the emperor. So emperor had direct access and direct command over military and the bureaucracy. So that was the first step that they took. So this actually meant that even after establishing a proper constitution, these two groups remained outside the control of the government. The government had nothing to do with the military and the bureaucracy even after developing a constitution. Why? Because the emperor was in charge of this military and bureaucracy. Did you understand? So in all these measures, the government faced opposition. Government did not have much power then. It was always under the direct control of the emperor. There was a lot of tension which came up within the country between different ideals, between different ideologies, which was represented by a democratic constitution. It was very difficult to set up this democratic ideas and constitution, and a modern army will have a far-reaching consequence also. So all these things was not accepted in the beginning just like that. The army was forced to go through vigorous foreign policy so that they will acquire more territory. So it was prone to this foreign policy. Of course, all these things led to war with China and Russia, in both of which Japan was the victor. So army was forced to go through this vigorous foreign policy, but that led to war. But Japan was strong enough to defend themselves and emerge victorious. So it represented the ideals, and everything is very important, whatever is mentioned here. There was a lot of demand for the setting up of democracy. People were also supporting it, and was often in opposition to the government's aggressive policies. What the people did not like really was the aggressive policy of the government. Of course, they loved to be a democratic nation, but not with aggression of the government. So Japan developed economically. So one reason for Japan to develop economically is because of this. All these things. It was of course strict in the initial phase of the development of Japan, but because of that, there was a great economic development. It acquired a colonial empire that suppressed the spread of democracy at home and put it in collision with the people it colonized. So it acquired a colonial empire. Of course, it suppressed and repressed the spread of democracy. They were not very happy with democracy at home, and it was colliding with the people it colonized. Of course, Japan started colonizing many people, and they understood that democracy was not completely followed in Japan. Now we have to look at how the economy modernized there. Another important part of the Meiji reform was the modernizing of the economy, which is also very important as the economy of Japan. Funds were raised by levying an agricultural tax. They started levying agricultural tax even for the normal people in Japan. So like that, Japan's first railway line, which was put up between Tokyo and the port of Yokohama. This was the first line. It was built in 1870 to 1872. The first line between Tokyo and port of Yokohama. Textile machinery was imported from Europe. They started importing a lot of textile machinery from Europe, and foreign technicians were employed. Lot of people from the foreign places were employed to train workers. They gave opportunities to people from abroad. They were not completely aggressive to that. It is only to progress their economy that they gave access to the foreigners to come and train people here, because they were not exposed to such kind of things. And they also wanted foreigners to teach in universities and schools. And of course, they encouraged sending their own children abroad to learn about the techniques and put it in use in their own country. So they were very broad-minded in that way. In 1872, modern banking institutions were launched. So banking was also done in a very modern way. Companies like Mitsubishi and Sumitomo, you must have heard of these companies. They were helped through subsidies and tax benefits. Okay, so the government helped them a lot by giving them subsidies and tax benefits, and they were the major shipbuilders, so that Japanese trade was from now carried in Japanese ships. So it was subsidized or promoted by major shipbuilders, which helped them build these companies. And when they gave access to very major shipbuilders, they could carry on their trade in their own Japanese ships. So look at how everything was developing. They did not have to depend on anybody else for building the ship or trading for shipping and all that. Zaibatsu, organizations which were very large like Zaibatsu, it was controlled by individual families, Zaibatsu, that dominated the economy till after the Second World War. So such kind of small families which were really big, they started dominating and they started controlling the economy, but only till the Second World War. till that time. The population was almost 35 million in 1872, but it increased to 55 million in 1920 because of the emergence of trade, commerce and all that. To reduce population pressure, what the government did? They actively encouraged migration. They said you can go to any place and work. So they wanted people from Japan to move out. So first they said you can go to the northern island of Hokkaido. Okay, that was the first permitted place. And it was largely autonomous area where they could be very independent, where the indigenous, that is a native people called Ainu lived. We saw about Ainus in one of the previous audios. And then they permitted to migrate to two other places, Hawaii and Brazil, as well as to the growing colonial empire of Japan. So you should understand that Japan was also accessing, it was also growing as a major colonial empire by annexing other places.